Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Fargo Season 5, Episode 9 reaction and review. This is called The Useless Hand, and I remember going into this episode and kind of being like, what is that going to be a reference to? Like, what in the world does that mean? But I think we know now, guys. I think we've all got it figured out.
Oh, Gator. I mean, it's hard to feel sorry for him. He is such a complicated
Mhm.
character. Like, some really bad, dark things happen to him as a young guy. Everything that happened with him and Dot as children, with Roy in this episode. But we've also seen him do a lot of really bad things, including in this episode, some of the things that he offered Munch. Like, I was just cringing through this. But by the time we got to the end of all of this, that last scene with Gator and Roy, it brings up the question, is Gator going to kill Roy? What do you guys think? Leave it for us in the comments.
Mhm.
We are going to get deeper into that because it's a complicated subject.
It's really born out of everything that we have seen this entire season because, yes, Gator is not a protagonist in this tale. He is not a good person. He is, in fact, a pretty bad person. Now, is this the classic nature versus nurture debate? Maybe. If Gator was in a different household, different environment, maybe he would turn out to be something else. And I've said this in another video or two. I don't think we're watching a redemption story here. Like, this isn't about redemption for Gator because I don't think he can redeem himself, but he can do the right thing in an instance. He can make a different
Mhm.
choice. Maybe this will put him on the road to something, but it's not like somebody like him can go and do one thing and then just like start to celebrate and dance around and be like, "I'm redeemed." It's not that simple.
Well, this is the thing too, is what's going to make him do the right thing? Because we've had everything that happened with Dot and he still didn't do the right thing to help her. We had him in the situation with Munch where he was, begging for his life, offering all these horrible things, and he still wasn't doing the right thing. He was still like, "Hey, you want this? You want like terrible, terrible things." Like, he still wasn't there. Then we get to the end where he's basically like, he's calling Roy daddy. He's like wailing on the ground. He's blinded. He needs his help. Nothing. Roy walks away from him. So, like, what is it that's going to push him to do the right thing? And I said this in the last video, and tinfoil hats on
Yeah, yeah.
early, guys. I still think that it's going to be the compassion from Dot that she gave him when they were both children and they were dealing with Roy and Linda and everything that was going on, where they were able to comfort each other and she was able to comfort him in this time. I think that type of compassion and comfort could again be the thing that lets him see that there is another way to do things. It doesn't have to be hard and mean and, like this anymore. It can be another way.
We are going to dive all sorts of into these other ways and different scenarios and theories. But before we do, hit that subscribe button because this weekend, Sunday night, True
Mhm.
Detective Season 4 is premiering on HBO. We could not be more excited. We have so much great stuff coming, and by subscribing, you help us to be able to make these videos we love to do for you guys so much.
Absolutely. We're going to be bringing you True Detective videos twice a week. So hit that subscribe button and stick with us.
Okay, let's to get back to that question you posed at the start of all of this. Will Gator kill Roy? I'm going to be in the yes camp here. I think he's going to be the person who actually does it. And I kind of felt like it was possible before this episode. And I understand as well that it will be very satisfying too if Dot does it. But it just feels like Gator is somebody who is really on the ground at this point. He knows the ins and outs of Roy's whole compound. And I think
Mhm.
Roy still, after everything that happens in this episode, he probably doesn't think that Gator is capable of anything, especially now that he's been blinded. He probably really doesn't think that Gator is capable of it. He has treated his kid here like dirt. And, Gator, unfortunately, has just been sort of brought up in this environment where his dad is this all-encompassing sort of deity figure that he has to please and answer to, and it's really really sad. But I agree with you that it's going to be Dot who ends up sort of allowing him to see another side. We know that Dot is out there. Hopefully the two of them can come into contact. I don't even think it will necessarily take a ton of compassion because Gator, he is compassion starved. I think he will take like just like that tiny, tiny morsel of just something to maybe make him feel a little bit different. And I mean, so far this season, that's really been one of the few people who's actually shown him any of that already.
Yeah, she absolutely has. And after everything that Gator has done to her this season, coming to her house is on fire, everything that trying to, abduct her husband, everything that's happened, that if she's the person who ends up showing compassion towards him in his own mind, if he can really process that to be like, oh my goodness, after everything I've done to this person, she's still here to, reach her hand down to me to be able to be like, let me help you up. We can do this together. I think it can be a stepping stone. I don't think he's getting redeemed, but I think he
Mhm.
can be, taking a step onto a different path that will lead him somewhere else. He's still a young guy. I'm a person who believes
Mhm.
anybody can change if the right elements come into play, whether it's a situation, a person, whatever it is that changes your view on something and puts you on a different path. It doesn't matter how old you are, you're able to do it. And that's why, for me, I think that yes, Gator will be the person to kill Roy with Dot. I think together the two of them are both going to sort of exact their revenge of what happened to both of them as kids, which what also continued to happen to Gator up until adulthood, and then now what has happened to Dot. I feel like she'll give him compassion. He knows that his dad has turned on him when he needed him the absolute most.
Mhm.
He knows that he wasn't named Roy, and now this is all kind of sitting in his head after what Dot said. Think if Dot's there for him, that they can go and do this together. And for me, that'll be more satisfying. I don't want to see just Gator. This is Dot's story and Dot's revenge.
And I think having Gator be within, within his signature profession here that we have seen all season, like that could be helpful for Dot at the end of all of this. I don't know how much credence Gator's gonna have
Mhm.
as like, a witness or an authority figure, but if something happens to Roy, will he be able to be like, oh, Dot didn't do it, something else happened here to be able to make sure that she doesn't face consequences? Like I think there's a lot of different scenarios that could be woven together, though it's all very dependent on Gator actually kind of waking up, like even just a little bit, just enough. I don't think anybody wants to see a miserable ending to Fargo this season, and by miserable, that's got to win, right?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, she's at least in a better spot than when we first started this episode. I mean, this whole thing ended with her hiding with Danish and Linda and all the bodies that he's been putting under the windmill and people coming to get her. And who's there to save her? It's Munch. And it feels like they're the debt has been repaid, that he did this to her and now he's been able to help her and let her go and have to deal with things the way that she is going to have to deal with things. And it was I've never been the biggest Munch fan. I'm not saying I don't like him. It just always kind of felt like there wasn't enough for him to do. Like we ended up with this whole storyline in the middle where he's just staying at some old lady's house and there was no he was like a boat without a rudder and I just didn't really know where it was going. But this was very satisfying for him to come in and really help her.
Yeah, for the first time, I'm coming out of an episode of Fargo being like, who was really cooking in this episode? It was Munch. I
Hmm.
I enjoyed all the Munch content. I enjoyed him dragging Gator through the snow and the ice. I love that Munch, every single thing that he says is cryptic, and this is why it's a reminder. It's never too late in a season of a video discussion to introduce an impression. So here we go.
Oh my goodness, here we go.
Did you know that you can have fried chicken with so many signature herbs and spices?
This sounds like your
Did
Russell
you?
Hantz.
I'm the best Fargo character of all time. No, it just feels like you can have Munch talking about what do I use for my laundry? And it would sound cryptic and mysterious, and you would get like all in. He could talk about anything. Actually, my Munch also sounds a little bit like Batman, and maybe I don't know how close they really are to each other. Doesn't really matter, but I enjoyed Munch's presence on the show this time around, mostly because it gave a really good kind of contrast to here we have everything with Roy and all the different authorities and everyone who is assembling at the ranch. And you're sort of going with this like heavy action craziness to something a little bit more isolated, mostly involving a couple of characters. It's weird,
Mhm.
it's chilling, but it really kind of shows you this is the sort of justice that Munch wants. He is not going so binary as like, okay, Gator, you killed this person, I'm going to kill you. It's a lot more complicated and it's more interesting.
Yeah, and to me, it was even more interesting that Munch's bigger problem wasn't that he tried to kill him, but that he actually killed the woman that he was staying at her house. Just be like, this woman's gone through enough already with her son and everything else, and then you're just gonna come along and like for why? Why would you do that to her? She's done nothing to you, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
That it really hurt Munch.
he's a really interesting character. He's got a very particular code. I mean,
Mhm.
Munch could probably put this code out in bookstores and it would be successful just because, like, you got to read through all of it to really understand it. But, he's still a player on the board entering the finale. It's hard to really say exactly where he's going to fall. But for Roy here, like, I've felt for a long time that we were going to sort of see the slow disintegration of everybody around him. And it's a really ironic episode because, like, early on, he's calling up all these people and being like, I'm the sheriff, everybody come here. And he's like trying to assemble his group. But then at the same time, you've got even his father in law being like, why are we really doing this again? Like, this is going to be leading to a lot of consequences. And it's just over this woman. Like, he's already seemingly going to lose Gator at this point. He doesn't have any of the local authorities on his side. Who knows what's happening with Karen after what happened with her and Dot.
Yeah, his reaction to walking through the house and seeing Karen laying on the floor bleeding out and just keep on going, I was like, "Oh wow, he truly cares nothing for her at all."
Yeah.
Like at all. And he did have that talk with one of his guys too where he was just like, "The only thing I've ever really cared about is Nadine slash Dot." That he was just like, she's the only person that's ever made me actually feel anything in my life. And I don't want to ever feel that again. So she needs to go, sort of thing. And later, when we saw Dot having that confrontation with Karen as well, I was like, I'm not sure exactly where they're going to end up going with this because she got into the house. She's trying to make the call to her husband, Dwayne. Karen comes in, is like, put down the phone. They have this talk. I knew that Dot was going to throw everything at the wall at this to be like, hey, we're the same. You don't have to deal with his nonsense. Like, we can get out of here together. And Karen's like, I'm not buying that. I'm not making it that me and my children end up with nothing. Like, that's not the offer that I'm taking from you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've had to sleep in the same sheets that have never been washed since you left. And it's like, oh, it's been 10 years. Stop. It's just the grossest thing in this episode. I couldn't imagine. Like,
This
stop.
this is not a
Ew.
desirable place to live. Like, let's just throw that out there.
No, and I mean, it explains a lot more with Karen of why when Dot came to the ranch and she ended up slapping her and she was so upset about it in the car that she has this life that she's been in for a while now where she's been sleeping in their old sheets and she's had this resentment, almost like she feels like maybe the life could have moved forward if Dot wasn't still a part of it, but that Dot has never not been a part of it for 10 years, that she's still there, even though she's not there. And that it's been something that, on top of everything else that Karen has to deal with Roy, that she also has to deal with this ghost that's in her marriage, in with her children, in this house that will never leave. And now the physical person is in her house.
I hope with every fabric of my being, and this is not to say that Karen is a good person because she's not at all, but what I really hope is that her and the kids do find a way to get out of here in the finale and that they get out
Yeah.
of there without anything because of Karen's father. Because this is another part of this to me is just that clearly if, he likes being around Roy to some extent. He probably is not very different from Roy in a lot of aspects. So I think she was probably really controlled from a really young age. And I'm sure he probably had a hand in her being with Roy in the first place
Mhm.
with the, oh, he's a sheriff, he's a protector, he will be on our side. I want her to make a proactive choice when she's sort of realizing that everything around her is burning. And even if you don't like Dot, even if you have all this resentment from Dot, and I understand a lot of it, he's still got pictures of her up on various places. You
And
have,
they're sleeping in their 10-year-old
yeah,
old sheets.
you have an opportunity to just get out of here. You don't have to assist in any of the efforts. You don't have to do any of that. You can just get out of there and let what's happening happen, because I do think we're really zeroing in on this showdown, and I do think it's going to get crazy and deadly, and like there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, because it's pretty clear based on the confrontation between, you've got Roy over here and then all the feds and Wit over here. Like, neither side is really backing out here.
No, they're absolutely not. This is going to be really wild in this finale. We will have a preview up for you in a couple days here at the YouTube channel, but we haven't seen the preview yet. This
Yeah.
is just us sort of like projecting ahead into what we think is going to be happening. I mean, you've got Roy and all his guys on one side, you've got the FBI and Wit on the other. Wit is putting together, working with the team to rescue Dot. And I was really happy to see that that was coming together. Am I still a little bit worried about Wit? Yes. And it's your fault, because the last episode you were like, we're going to lose Wit. He's going to die. So I'm pretty worried about that, because he's a great character on this show. And all he wants to do is give back to Dot after Dot saved his life. He wants to save Dot's life. I would really like to see that happen. That would be really satisfying.
Is this a bad time to say that I still think Wit is going to die?
Yeah.
Okay. I do think he will help to save Dot, but I think he's also going to die. And this
No,
is, I
no.
don't want it, but it's just that I think we're asking a lot of Fargo to think that, okay, everybody on this show left who we like, and it's not really a lot of people at this point, but
Yeah.
that all of them are going to be able to come out of this okay, because it's like I think something really bad is going to happen to Roy. Like, either Roy's going to get killed or he's going to be arrested or something like that. And we'll see a lot of other, evil doers get their just desserts. But what's the cost of that? And I think Wit knows very well going into this what it is. And I think he is okay with that at this point, because he realizes that without Dot, he wouldn't be in this position at all in the first place. So I think he is really just gung ho, ready to throw everything in on it. And that is fun to me. And I really enjoyed the other feds for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was with them talking about like their other very much petty actions that they had done leading up to being here, and like Roy's trying to challenge them, and they have still a little bit of that like Midwestern charm, and yet I still think they can get the job done.
That was a really good standoff scene. Roy's speech there, just walking right up to him and giving it back. Very well done. Very intimidating on both sides. I think that this is going to be a really satisfying end.
Here's one thing I do have to say though as a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
We were promised a tank in the promo for this episode. Where's my tank? Darn it. I wanted the tank. I shouldn't say that because it's Roy's tank, apparently, and it's going to lead to really bad things. But
yes,
you can't show me a tank, and I'm sure the tank is going to be in the finale, which really should make me more worried. But it's just like, you
Yes.
threw it in there. You really got me hyped about this. I was sitting at the end of this episode being like, where's my freaking tank? Is the tank going to roll in as the credits are rolling?
everyone was so like excited about the tank. I remember we put up our preview and the first
Yeah.
comment was, Roy has a tank.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, he does.
Okay, you guys, if you don't give me this tank in the finale and you just left it on the cutting room floor, I am going to show up to Noah Hawley's office dressed as Munch.
Oh my
and I'm going to be like, I'm going to quote what Lamorne actually said. Consequences, they're coming.
Consequences are coming.
Other part of this episode that I did really, really like, though, and, Lorraine didn't have a ton of airtime, but what she did, and I'm probably misquoting it, and I don't care, just know how much her original quote was to Dot, where she's basically like, no daughter of mine is going down on the 5-yard line. And I was like, for one, it rhymed. That made me snicker, but it was also so sweet and so wholesome. Oh, look at this. Lorraine believes in you, Dot.
Absolutely. They finally have this connection that Dot's been longing for. And I think deep down, Lorraine wanted as well. It was just she couldn't get past herself. And again, like change can happen at any time in life. It takes a situation sometimes, or a person, or whatever it is, for that change to come in. And I mean, Dot had been married to Wayne for a long time, and nothing in that time had given that shift to her. But this really did. To hear her call her daughter and still be really tough like that and have that respect for how tough Dot is too. Oh my God, it was done so well.
Wayne is still, I don't know what Wayne is doing. He's just like taking care of Scotty, hanging
Yeah.
out, like all this other chaos. Wayne is interesting as like the biggest ghost character who just so happens to also be married to the main character who's in a ton of trouble.
Listen, he's also helping her. I know that there's been some people that want him to go and, help and save Dot and get more into the game. And I understand that. But not every character is like that. And not every person is like that.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think is helping Dot the most is knowing that Scotty is being taken care of by her father and that he is at home making sure she is safe. That is like one big worry that is off of her mind.
Mhm.
And Wayne is the person that is stepping in to make sure that that happens so that she can get out of the situation she's in. I think it's a really important role.
It is a reminder that not every hero needs to be like built like a tank, and not the tank we saw in a promo, but like just
Like
nobody.
Reacher.
Yes, not everybody needs to be Jack Reacher, and that's okay, Wayne. You are good in your own right. Like I think in general, this is a really good episode that brought a ton to the table. It's a hard one to talk about individually to me because it really just feels like a two-parter, and
Hmm.
the finale is just gonna pick up where this one left off. So it's kind of like, do we give this an incomplete because we haven't seen what's on the other side of it? But I mean, the build-up is insane, and we finally got great Munch content and a lot to wonder about with Gator.
Yeah, this episode was really setting the table for the big finale. It's going to be coming up next week, but yeah, my biggest questions coming out of this is, what is Gator's role going to be? Is this the last time we've seen him, or is something going to happen where maybe Dot stumbles across him, helps him, together they take down Roy? Like it's got to be Dot, but if it's Dot and Gator, I'd be satisfied with that too.
All right. Well, as Jess said, we will have a preview up for the finale
Mhm.
later this week. So hit that subscribe button. Also, True Detective coming this weekend on HBO.
Yep.
Thank you to our patrons for your support. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys here next time.